This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, howdy, good afternoon. Welcome everybody to our Paths to Publication. This is our webinar series for the ELRC and Credella, presented by both centres. My name is Matthew Mitchells. I'm the Director of Education Outreach, Marketing Communications. Today we have with us Kara Sutton Jones, who works for the ELRC and Credella. And Kara is going to talk to us today about Go Fish. Recently renamed title, A Quick and Simple Introduction to Grant Writing for Education Research. Kara, before you get going, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit and talk about maybe some of the grants that you worked on, some of the stuff you did in grad school, some of the stuff you've done post-grad school? Just kind of introduce yourself for a minute.
So my name is Kara Sutton Jones. I recently graduated from the bilingual program, so I'm done. Before graduate school, I was a journalism major. I was a magazine editor. I was a technical writer, and I did communications for 3 years. So I have a lot of writing and editing background, which I apply to this grant writing. I've helped on, I want to say 13 different proposals, grants along the way. So everything I've learned from Dr. Latta and Dr. Irby and Dr. Tong. So this is my take on what I've learned and my experience on doing this.
Wonderful, thank you, Kara. I'll go ahead and make you the presenter, Kara.
Okay.
All yours.
Can you guys see my screen?
Not yet.
Shoot. Does it not want to show? Okay, how about now?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. I have 2 screens, so it's always a mystery to go back and forth and see what's going to show up. Okay. So Dr. Latta commonly refers to our grant writing process as fishing. So hence the title Go Fish, because it very much is you send your proposals out there and you reel it back in to see what you get. So that's kind of the where this is from. So in the agenda today for today's proposal, or for today's presentation, is to take a look at the different types of grants, to know where to look for grants, some examples of competitions, the basic parts of a proposal because it follows a basic format, some proposal writing suggestions, and ultimately other considerations when you are grant writing. So different types of grants that you as an aspiring academic, future faculty member are likely to go looking for. Research grants in the realm of like LISTO and LAV. We have these from, or we have had these from in the past from NSF, from NES, IES, I should say, and various other organizations. Training grants, WAT Working All Together was a training grant that we had from the state. ETEL is kind of a strange training grant because it also has a research component. Individual grants that you would likely want to go out and maybe like Fulbright Hays, and then of course your dissertation fellowships and things like that. So there's a lot of places you could look for grants going forward. Obviously, the biggest one and the biggest funder is federal agencies like NSF and the Department of Education, state agencies like TEA, professional organizations and groups. So these would be everything from like our AER, oh, I have slides for these. So everything, grants.gov. This is the clearinghouse for all federal grants. This is a great place to sign up. You can get an email notification of any new federal grants, any changes to grants that you're thinking about pursuing. So this is a great place to look for grants. TEA also has a couple of competitive grants. They are on this page way down at the bottom, and most of them are related to ELLs. So that is another option. AERA has a number of different grant options that you can also look for your dissertation, research grants, conference grants. So they will fund conferences that you put together and bring in different speakers and that kind of thing. While I was looking the other day, I also saw that the NEA has grants for its members and its affiliates, and they will support both PD and school focus kinds of grant work for their teacher members. You also have philanthropic organizations like the Houston Endowment. They fund research as well as things supporting schools, and they have a number of different threads through their mission statement that they will fund in Houston schools. There's also opportunities inside lots of universities where they give you small dollar amounts to kind of launch your research agenda if you're a faculty member. These are competitive. All of these are competitive, I should mention. So there's a proposal process. It's reviewed. You may get some well, most of them you will get feedback on, especially if it's a federal grant. But all of these are competitive. All of them are different options that you can think about in the future applying for. So in the 2021 competitions through IES, I wanted to give you kind of an idea of the different kinds of competitions that you can think about applying for. You have anything from straight up research grants to center grants, where you're putting together a proposal for saying, hey, we want to put together a research center. We're going to focus on this topic within the scope of the competition. Another thing to consider when you're applying to these, there are different levels within these competitions. Like the education research for 2021 had multiple levels. There were measurement, exploration, which is kind of a low dollar entry level. You have an idea, you may not have a lot of research evidence to back it up. So you're feeling it out, you're trying. The next steps up are your development and innovation and your initial efficacy and follow-up. So these are like scale-up grants where you have this idea, you've developed it some, you've applied it across multiple schools, and then for your later scale-up, it's, hey, we want to take this statewide or nationwide, however much you think you can actually accomplish within the budget, and that's another issue, I'll get there, available to you. So a good place to start, always with the directions. So as I mentioned, grants.gov will put out notifications of when new competitions become available. So you're going to want to look for the RFP. The RFP is going to lay out everything, but the most important details to look at in the beginning are your deadline, the award limits for the cost. So how much money do you think the grant, or are they setting the limit out for the grant? What's the budget? They're also going to tell you this competition will allow up to 3 years for the project. Sometimes they allow up to 5. It varies depending on the competition. Also, your eligibility. They have different competitions that are created for different groups. So, are you an institution of higher ed, like A&M? Yes, you can apply to those competitions, but they also have some that are directed towards states and local school districts and nonprofits. So that's important to see who's eligible for the grant. Next, you're also going to want to note any limitations for the number of proposals or who can serve as PI, co-PI, and the senior project staff. Sometimes there are limits to the number of PIs that can be on a grant. Sometimes there are limits on the number of project submissions coming in from a particular institution. So I've seen some where you only get 2 from one organization. So that means 2 total proposals coming out of A&M. So that's always something to look for. Note any requirements for evidence, which is very common across Department of Ed competitions. You're also going to want to look for any cost sharing requirements. This is common in EIR competitions. Cost sharing are where they set a dollar amount for like the lower competitions where it's like $1 million. They want 10% cost sharing. So you have a private business or a nonprofit or an individual that says, yes, I will contribute X dollar to this 10% amount of your budget. So those are things that you want to look for at the beginning, see if you can meet those or see where you're going with that. So the most basic parts of a proposal are obviously your abstract. Normally they want a 1-page abstract where you lay out the essential details of the competition, any special features, partners. Sometimes you have to specify what strand of the competition you are applying for inside that abstract. Normally a 1-page table of contents. Your narrative generally is going to include your literature review, any current literature research knowledge that we already know, your proposed project design, as well as the goals and objectives, a management plan for your future project, what resources can your team, as well as expertise, does your team bring to the proposal. Your project evaluation plan is essentially what kinds of analyses, what kinds of data, what are you going to put together for your evaluation to show, hey, this meets WWC standards, and we expect to find whatever it is you're expecting to find. But this lets them know, yes, you have a plan. Yes, you have a reliable way to go about evaluating it. And then, of course, your references and your budget and budget narrative. Your budget drives a lot of what you do in the proposal and in your future project. So those are definitely very important components. And then, of course, all of your appendices, any VITAs, letters of support from your partners, your school districts who have agreed to provide a letter. Those are all things that are just basic parts of the proposal. So let me talk about some of these proposal suggestions for your writing. It's really important to start early. This is probably the single most important tip I can give you. Grant writing involves long hours in front of your computer, so you want to take breaks. You want time to reflect, go back, revise. You're going to be reaching out to a lot of different parties, and that, of course, takes time. Are they agreeable? Things like that. Second, you want to think about the expertise that is already available in your group. So, you know, are you science education people? Are you math education people? You know, obviously for us, we are doing a lot of work with ELL. So you want to target towards those competitions that you have the expertise for. And if you don't have that expertise, you want to think about, okay, who can I go out to tap to bring in as a partner, as a co-PI, or whatever. It's always a good idea to look at previously funded proposals. That gives you an idea of what's been funded and how they put their proposal together. You always get a lot of good ideas looking at them. Another tip, be realistic about what you can expect to accomplish within your budget and project length. It's really easy to start getting all kinds of ideas and putting them in there. And the bigger the better, because you know you always want that big N, but sometimes you have to strip it down a little bit and say, okay, what can we reasonably do within this time frame and in our budget? They always want to see a project timeline. So give them an idea of the major milestones and goals and outcomes that you expect, when you expect them to happen within your project. So that's always something important to include in your proposal. Make liberal use of your graphics, tables, charts, and other visuals. Do your reviewers a favor because they look at lots of proposals. So if you can distill your ideas and concepts down to diagrams, figures, all the better for the sake of your proposal success and for your reviewers, because they're going to appreciate that. Another idea, use the proposal evaluation criteria to create an outline for your proposal and then fill in your proposal around that. This forces you to hit all the evaluation components in your proposal, and it makes it easier for the reviewers to find because you are following a format. So here's one we did recently. This was Project Victory. So you can see these are the big selection criteria. So our table of contents follows this exactly. We have each section, the significance, and all the minor subsections for each of these. And this is pretty standard for what you'd see on these proposals. Okay. Another tip for writing when you're trying to figure out how much space to allot for a certain section, use the point values assigned to the to that section. So if your project evaluation is worth 25% of the total points, then the evaluation should get roughly 25% of the pages in the narrative. That helps keep it balanced and keeps it within the framework of what they're asking for. Write for clarity and brevity, super important. Space is at a premium in these. It's always very easy to go over. So the tighter you're writing, the cleaner you're writing, the easier it is for you to edit down the line and stay within the page count. Another good idea, have others read your work and give you feedback, especially other team members who are going to be maybe your content experts in a particular area. So if you need to pull in a computer science person and you don't have much of a background in computer science, have them look at that section because you want to say what you mean and sound knowledgeable. Pay close attention to the formatting requirements. This includes graphics and tables. On one of our previous proposals, we went back and forth about whether or not the tables and the graphics had to be double spaced. And just to play it safe, we went back and did all of our tables and things double spaced because it didn't have any caveats about whether or not those could be single spaced. So pay very close attention to the graphing or to the formatting requirements, because that will save you time down the line so you don't have to go back and do it, or even worse, your proposal after all that work gets rejected. That is possible. They will reject your proposal because it does not follow the formatting requirements. Okay. So other considerations that you want to think about when you're doing your proposals. The vast majority of the Department of Education competitions require evidence. So you need to have a good working knowledge of the What Works Clearinghouse standards and the evidence standards, the evidence levels. Dr. Tong's evaluation course covers all of this information and is very helpful in knowing what the standards are and what the sponsoring agencies expect to see in terms of the evaluation design, the research design. So those, it's very helpful. But you'll know if the research evidence you have will support the project you're proposing, because you have different levels of evidence for different levels of the competition. So generally, the higher the evidence requirement, the dollar amount is also greater, because maybe you're doing a scale up and they want to see, yes, we know for sure that these techniques, this concept, these things have worked in these smaller grants. We have evidence research to back it up. One idea, if you are new or you're just starting out, WWC has a searchable website where you can look at previous studies that have been evaluated by WWC. So if you don't have anything that's your own and you're still thinking about, well, maybe I want to do a study on reading strategies, there's lots of reading literature in that database where you can find things that are evidence-based, that have already been evaluated. So those are out there. So next consideration, IDC. So I mentioned how important budget is. IDC is indirect cost rate. When faculty get a grant, all the different levels inside the university get a little portion of it. So the university gets some, the college gets some, the department gets some. So ultimately, the amount that the researcher has to work with is not going to be the full amount of the award. A&M's current IDC is set at 51.5% for on-campus projects and 26%, I believe, for off-campus projects. So ultimately, that means the IDC can eat up a lot of the budget. There are some sponsoring agencies that specify what the cost rate, with IDC cost rate has to be. Like they don't want to see more than 15% go to IDC. I haven't seen many of those competitions lately, but they are out there. Don't be afraid to reuse and recycle old unfunded proposals and revise them for the next competition. This saves you time and energy, and you'll have another opportunity to float your ideas to the sponsoring agency. It's always a good thing. We've used different versions of proposals before. Mar Robotics and OLAS, we've done that one in a couple different iterations. So it's a good thing to do. Another suggestion, always be mindful of who you're working with and what all you're sharing when you're developing proposals, whether you're sharing ideas, whether you're sharing written documents, especially when you're not working with people you know well. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but it happens, and you don't want to be taken advantage of. Academia is competitive and funding is tight, so just keep that in mind. Keep in mind too that competition agendas are determined by the funding agencies. Despite appearances, researchers don't get to dictate what research gets the priority or what the competition focus is. So normally when the funding agencies are determining what the agenda is, they might be thinking of, for example, federal agencies. What is the presidential administration's education agenda? What is the research literature saying as far as where are there holes in the research knowledge? So those are things to keep in mind about the competition agendas. Also, the importance of your district, school, and teacher trust with the research team. This is so important. Starting with the letters of support, because they will help you secure the grant. It shows that the districts are behind you. They're willing to go along. They're interested in your research. They have you. They're supporting you. You need the districts, the schools, and the teachers on your side. So you need good communication. You need to be upfront. And if possible, provide resources and training as part of your grant. Write them into the grant to make sure that you're bringing resources for those classrooms, for those schools. It helps with teacher buy-in. It helps if the teachers are invested. It also helps with fidelity. So anything you can do to make their lives a little easier, you know, whether that's training, classroom resources, it's all a good thing. So here's some last ideas. Being awarded the grant is just the first step. The actual implementation is still ahead. Dr. Latta reminded me that there's other challenges that lie ahead as far as securing resources, successful implementation, evaluation, writing the reports, and other tasks that are also integral to the process of doing the grant. It's all part of the cycle. So this is just the step out the door to get there, but it is a crucial step because if you don't get out the door, you don't start the project. Grant writing is time intensive, it's labor intensive, but diligence and focus pay off because then you have these opportunities to do this grant work. Grant funding opens the door to many other opportunities that you may not have had otherwise in terms of research, publications, presentations, actually working in schools and doing real impact through your research. And for those of us who are thinking about careers inside academia, grants are getting more and more important because they want to see their faculty members are actually going out, writing, and securing grants in order to carry their research forward. So, do I have any questions or comments?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kara. So we'll do this two ways. One, you can put your questions in the chat and I can ask them for you. The other way you can do it is you can turn your mic on and ask them directly to Kara. And I think the way this probably works, it will open up, Dr. Lara can pitch in, Dr. Tom can pitch in, Dr. Irby can pitch in, those with grant writing experience. So any questions? We've got about 30 minutes.
Yes, I would like to make a general comment. First of all, thank you, Dr. Kara Sutton-Jones. Very well presentation. I know that you are getting better and better and better and better. And this is exactly the nature of writing grants. At the beginning, we don't know if we start with a training grant or a research grants, or little by little, we are learning key things. For example, if my plans is to write a training grant, my first question is how well prepared we, the team, is or are to write a competitive training grant. As Dr. Karen Sutton was saying, you really want to keep this beautiful opportunity for the rest of your life. You have to be a good partner with the school district. What do I mean by a good partner? Well, share part of the cake, not just be only for you. That's exactly the way that we start writing our major grants in Houston area, sharing good portion of the cake and open day by day more and more opportunities. I don't know if Dr. Linda Rodriguez is there. She was a key at the time that we, for the first time, put our first foot in Houston schools. She was instrumental assisting us with all the complexity of the school districts. This is one issue. The second issue, I like this metaphor that Cara had on the first of the slides. Fishing, yeah, actually it's a fishing activity, but be sure you are familiar with fishing. Be sure that when you are ready to start fishing, be sure that the lake has good fish and has plenty fish, because it's only have 1 or 2, 3 fish and 100 people fishing, and that happened exactly with grants. Yeah, we have to be sure there are quite a good number of grants, and we have the skills, knowledge to compete. That's very good, 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 good. And the other thing is, let me tell you, I'm so glad how much we at the university level have advanced. When I did my doctoral studies at the University of Utah, we didn't have any idea. I talked to my advisor and he said, "Oh, Rafael, no, we here universities, we never deal with grants. So what can I do?" Well, he says, all that you have to do is to go to a private business and to write and to learn from those guys the way that they write proposals with the federal government. I was extremely lucky that that year I applied for a private business for a position, and I was so lucky that I got that position. That was in Oregon, and that private company had all the different federal grants, Title 1, under Title 1, Title 3, Title 7, etc. And I had the opportunity to know in 1 year the complexity of the grants, the social aspect of the grant, how to approach key players such as school districts, superintendents. It's great. And my last comment is this: for all of you that are looking for opportunities in higher education, let me tell you, that is the best way that you can secure a ticket to be part of that university. Because tell me, what institution doesn't like to see someone saying, "I know how to make money"? So keep about this, but it's something that you have to learn little by little, little by little, especially big grants. This is something like Chiara was saying, the opportunity to provide graduate students with better tools.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Assisting, I would say, with some economical package, some tuition, some fees, but yeah, the combination of research and grants. That's my comment.
I will share one thing as well, and I'll share my screen real quick with you. If you go to the Division of Research webpage, there is a foundation directory, there's a funding directory, there's the link to the grants.gov, Maestro's there, and then Pivot, which is something that we didn't discuss too much directly today, but Pivot is there as well, and Pivot is a database of all grants you can go to. I'll grab that link for you and put it in the chat for us, but this is the sort of a good place to start at A&M to try to figure out where you want to go with your grants. Good. Do we have more questions?
Yes, I have a comment and a question. So the comments I have, it's about the new grant writers like us. I mean, we are all new and grant writers. So to be eligible to be a PI, it's not available for staff or for postdoc or for students. So it's better to be connected and mentored with a PI who have experience on the field of grant writing, and then they will be the PIs, and at their supervision you can start knowing all of the tricks and all of the skills that you need to write the grant. For the postdoc, they also need a department head approval to be a PI if like the postdoc wants to be the PI or a co-PI for a grant. This is one. The second one is I wanted to get one of Dr. Lara's advice to me when I start writing the grants with him. He said, start with small grants. Don't go to the millions and millions one, because this would be very competitive and needs more experience. For new grant writers, they need to start with small ones and to be more realistic about your experience and your skills to win this award. The third thing is about if you applied for a grant and you didn't get it, or it's not funded for you, it's better to read the proposal of those who win it. And grants.gov always provide the full proposal for those who win the grants, so you can read through and see what was the strength point in their proposal and what you missed in your proposal, so you can improve your skills. Those are the three things I just want to share with you, and I have a question to Kara about the cost sharing. So
Yeah.
would you please speak more about the cost sharing in the grant?
So let's see, LAV, Listo, and a couple other ones that we've applied for require cost sharing. GoToMeeting, Citrix is the major partner for those. So Dr. Irby in the past has reached out to them. What's his name? Paul. What's Paul's last name? I forget what Paul's last name is, but okay. We have a contact at GoToMeeting. So we say, hey, we're interested in applying for this grant. We are needing X dollar amount. So they'll agree to do, like, some of them, they'll just do like a in-services exchange. So we'll buy a certain number of licenses or something like that, and in exchange they'll do like a number of licenses for free. Cindy and Bartlett is his last name. Cindy can talk more about like the licenses and things like that, but they agree to a dollar amount. They figure out what the services would cost, and so they'll write a letter, and that goes into our application packet. So then we figure out, okay, we have this amount that's agreed upon from from Citrix. We have a couple other smaller partners who are going to do like this one will give us some curriculum at like a big discount or something like that. This one will do this amount, and we get these letters, and then they become our project partners. So sometimes it's vendors, sometimes it's services, sometimes it's materials, sometimes it's like evaluation services, like Dr. Koch is sometimes a member of the team, and the cat's back. And she would provide like this amount of her time. She would normally bill as a consultant or a contractor at this amount, because she's PhD in, I want to say, science education. Dr. Irby could tell me better on that one. But anyway, she does consulting. So X amount of her time would be worth this dollar amount. So that's how we get into, if our budget is $1 million, we need 10% of $1 million. And that's how we figure out what the cost sharing is. So then we start talking to partners and say, hey, we're trying to get to this amount. Can you work with us? And that's essentially how we do it.
You're looking, just to chime in on that, you're looking for a two-way beneficial relationship. So for example, our relationship with LogMeIn, it benefits us because we use their products and services. It benefits them that they get to say they're a tier 1 research institution, is a partner with them, and they get to put the A&M logo on the website, and there's multiple benefits to them. And there's multiple companies looking for these partnerships. But with the metaphor for grant writing that I've learned from Dr. Ubi and Dr. Lara is you want to kind of think of it like if you see something that is a December 15th deadline, you're looking for a tree that already has fruit on it that you can pick. So you got to do something very quick. This is a very small grant that you can work with 1-2 partners. There's no matching. You just take IDCs into consideration. You're probably not going to have GAs working on it. It's just you and a buddy, right? 150,000, 200,000, small grant. If you plant something today and you're looking a year out, 2 years out, as Dr. Lara, Dr. Ubi, and Dr. Tong do, they look 3-4 years out. Where are we going to be in 3 years? Where are we going to be in 5 years? Where are we going to be in 10 years, right? ELRC is coming up on its 10th birthday now, by the way. So where are we going to be in 10 years? If you do that, you can plant a seed that can grow, and you can grow it out. So for us, we have stable things in the centers. We have virtual mentoring and coaching. We have VPLCs. We have the SLIs, right? We do all these things that have grown across multiple grants. Stella, Let's Talk Science. These things have been used and grown as products and services out of multiple grants. Those now are lucrative for us in some senses, that they bring valuable money and resources back into the center that we can continue to grow that out. So it starts to feed into itself. But it's that piece of getting started. But I will say to you that I won't say anything else. You will not have another opportunity like this in your career. The likelihood is you will not have another opportunity like this in your career, to be around 2 Regents professors who have brought in over $100 million in grant money in their careers. This is like, you'd have to go to Harvard, Stanford, MIT to get this opportunity. You have it working in the centers. And one of the reasons why we started the paths to publication, and now we're focusing on grant writing to an extent, is to give you these opportunities to get started. So my advice would be, don't leave the webinar and go, oh, that must be nice, and look at your colleague, right? You should do that. That'd be great. You should apply for a grant. We're talking to you, yourself, you. Get started with this, look at Pivot, look at the Division of Research, talk to Dr. Lara, talk to Dr. Ubi, talk to Dr. Tong, talk to Kara, talk to Nahed, talk to Cindy, talk to David. They've all worked on grant pieces, and I'm sure there's many other people in the center, right? Shifang's worked on some grants. I know multiple people have been working on grants. So have that conversation and get the ball rolling. Dr. Lara is nothing but encouraging towards grant writing. He will read your stuff, he'll support you, he'll talk to you about the matching pieces, he'll talk to you about IDCs. All these things are a good incubator to really launch this side of your career. And we all know, those of you who are looking for faculty jobs right now, we all know one of the first things they want to know is how much grant money do you have on your resume. You can have 1,000 pubs. 2020, you can have 1,000 publications. You can have been to 100 conferences. You will not get a 10-year track faculty job without grant money on your resume. It's a resume killer if you don't have it. It's that simple. This is a great place to fill out your resume and make you a fully 360-degree employable 10-year track professor. Okay, they're my thoughts.
I wanted to say something about writing the grant, if that's okay. Just as we're working on the papers, you know, we've been working on papers and writing papers. It's really critical, the same thing that we're working on in papers. So for example, if up at the top I have one thing stated, and then down at the bottom I have another thing stated, or in the middle, and then another thing in the bottom, and nothing matches, That is a problem. And it also is a problem with the grants. You know, you have to keep everything organized, and you have to be organized in your mind and on paper, and you have to double check yourself hundreds of times to make sure that it's saying the same thing. Because if one thing is ticked off and it's like off over here and off over there, then, you know, the reviewers, you're going to have wasted all of your time. So what you want to do is make sure that it's matching. And so just be sure that you're doing that as you're writing. And this practice with even with the papers is really critical and important, so that we're sure. And in addition, as I've indicated in some of the papers, like when, as I said a couple of weeks ago in that publication meeting, you know, this sentence leads to the next sentence. This paragraph leads to the next paragraph. This section leads to the next section. So everything has to build, and it has to all relate and connect. So transitions are important, connections are important, and, you know, sentences are important. So one sentence can't say one thing and then you jump thoughts to another thing. So those are all also important pieces in writing a grant. It's the same thing.
Good. And Hamada was asking about where we can look for grant resources and examples of grants. So for our grant is online through the Department of Education, and all of the other grants in our grant pool are within that same website, and you can go and look at those grants. If you search for the A+ grant, search for Listo, ETEL, all those grant documents, the narratives are online. There are certain words, and I've seen Dr. Irby in the way that she writes, there are certain words, sustainability, scalability, that Dr. Irby uses within the grants that the Department of Education is looking for, right? They're looking for certain words, they're looking for certain phrases, they're looking for certain terms of, does it meet the criteria? For the lead coordinators on the webinar, we all know our JEPRAs about growing it out, successful over 2 years, successful over more than 2 years, who do you serve? We all know those kind of phrasing of what our targets mean to the government, and writing those in to grants and making sure that when we write the APR reports, that we're very clear in answering those questions that the government's asked. And then it makes it easier for them to make a decision, right? Makes it way easier for them to make a decision. But what I would say is look at our grant narratives, look at the way we're writing our grants, because they work, right? The way that Dr. Irby is writing it, Dr. Lara, Dr. Tong, it looks like we're getting money to do what we're doing. So I would say for Hamada and others interested, go and look at the grant narratives that are being funded. It's all open access, it's all online through the Department of Education. If you just search the A+ grant, ETEL, Listo, they're all there, and the narratives are there of what the government has said, this is the final narrative. Anybody else in our grant pool that got funded as well, and the amounts that they were funded. So you get a good idea of, what do I need to pitch for what level of money?
Okay, so thank you for sharing that, Dr. Eshel. Yes, so what I'm thinking about, and thank you, Dr. Kara, for such a great presentation, and Dr. Lara for the relationship with districts, and Dr. Irby for clarity with writing and being consistent. And back to the keywords you mentioned, Dr. Echel's related to the keywords the district leaders want to say, wants to see in the document, and to the examples I'm thinking about. So what I'm thinking about is, if there is way that we have the grant numbers or titles, so the search for them is easy. And what I'm thinking about in terms of example is, if there is a way, Kira, that we have, this is the call of the proposal for this specific grant, as an example. And this is the one this is a grant we wrote, and I'm not sure if other grants are available online or not, if we can reach to some of these grants. And also, I'm not sure if they provide feedback like we get for a conference paper or things like that, if they provide feedback or comments. So we look at the call for proposals, some of the grants written related to this proposal, and kind of document analysis. This part was in the introduction was kind of like not relevant because so and so, like you mentioned in in part of your presentation, for example, try to be kind of like straightforward. I'm trying to remember the word you mentioned related to expectation for what you can introduce or present, can implement in the project, not to have this big thing that you will end up not being able to put in action. So example, call of paper, example, analysis, feedback. This is what I'm thinking about. This is the holistic idea I'm hoping to see somewhere. Is it possible?
So I don't know that there are going to be grants out there that will share their feedback because that normally goes directly to the PIs, but maybe our PIs, because we do have grants that we have feedback on, like OLAS, where we get feedback and we know, like, OLAS is a grant that we have sent to NSF, and we're going to send it in again this January with some tweaks because we've met with the grant officer. She's told us what it is they'd like to see. So we're going to revise and prepare it for the competition again in January. So maybe the PIs would be okay sharing that.
Yeah, I can follow up on that, Kara.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a couple of minutes left. I think we have time for maybe one more short question.
I don't have a question, Matthew, but in working with Dr. Lara and Dr. Ree over the past, I don't know, 20 something years, when we first started off working with districts in Aldine, I can tell you that a positive relationship with somebody in the school district is critical, and that they are also involved in the whole process of the grant. Because if you don't have that contact in the district, it's going to be very hard for you to, number one, write the grant, alongside with them, and also the follow-up that is required of the district itself. And you all know this, with collecting data and et cetera, how hard it is to get that. But if you have a good working relationship, and that means that you're available to the PIs really at any time, just like we are now, whenever they need something, we all step in and we get it done. It is the same thing, in the school district. You just have to have a really good contact.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dr. Rodriguez. And I think it's just a case of building those relationships out. I know for the work that I do in education outreach, it's important to know what's going on around the state, which superintendents are going to which school, who's retiring, who's moving, who's coming in new. And this is the long-term plan that Dr. Obi and Dr. Lara and Dr. Tong think about, is so through PAL and Component 100A Plus, we have a principal preparation program that then grows out principals that might later become superintendents. So it gives us an in to the schools through the principals and then later those superintendents. If we think about something like MOOPLs, Dr. Obi has written it into A+, that we have MOOPL as a platform, but then we also have in the grant that people are making more MOOPLs for us. So it continues to grow. And then every time you write an iteration of the grant or you're applying for further grants, you have this solid product that was 200 and then 600 and then 1,000, then 1,500, then 1,800. It continues to grow out. So Dr. Obi is phenomenal at thinking about how do we scale up, what's the longevity, how do you grow things out, how do you repurpose stuff, how can we use it across multiple grants in multiple ways. So considering that, for me, looking into the grants, what are the products and services of the grant? It's been really illuminating and understanding how do you continue to get money around things like MOOPLs, things like virtual mentoring and coaching, things like PLCs, things like SLIs. How do you grow that out so it's not just 1 or 2 meals, it's now an entire restaurant? Like, how do you continue to grow something out to become fully nationally scalable and internationally scalable for some of our work as well? Okay, so there are a couple of things to ponder. But as we said earlier, as Kara said, start, look for something, 50,000, 80,000, look for an X grant. X grant's coming up now. They're due, I think, to start December. Look at those smaller grants. Look at some smaller opportunities with maybe SIGs at AERA. Sometimes they're giving money out. SCRA, some smaller grants, some smaller conferences, some smaller organizations. Start small, work with the PIs, have patience. Just like getting journal articles out, your first grant is going to get ripped to shreds and you're going to be thinking, I'm never doing this again. Just like our first journal articles, every time you work in it, every time you submit, the reviews get a little bit easier, a little bit better, you gain a bit more confidence. Take that first step, okay? Kara is a resource, Nahed is a resource, Cindy is a resource, David is a resource, Shifang is a resource, Dr. Tong is a resource, Dr. Lara is a resource, Dr. Irby is a resource. You have an entire team around you. Take the first step and start moving on it. Even just send them a link. I'm thinking about applying to this. What do you think? Dr. Irby can look at that in 2 seconds and go, that's a waste of time. Don't do that. Dr. Lara can look at it. Go for it. Okay? So leverage the skill sets that we have in the center. And if you get it right, this will out to a level that maybe you're not thinking about right now. Okay, anything else, folks?
So I have one more. So you have to remember too, you have to have the right people in the seats on the bus. And so that's what we have. We have a wonderful team. You all are great. And you all are in the right seats and you help lead those grants. And, you know, without you, and David does a lot of contacts with districts. He knows who to call. He is great with that. He is our go-to person. So we know our people and what their strengths are. That's the other thing you have to know in your grants. You really need to know the strengths of your people and try to get them in the right place. Sometimes it's not the exact right place at first, and you have to keep figuring and working with them to get them in the right spot. And once you get them in those, it really becomes a sweet spot. So you get them there and it's just wonderful. And we're all in the right spot on the bus and we're all traveling together.
Thank you, Dr. Irby.
I have one comment for Hamada's question. So grants are, especially like the proposals, are very confidential. It's like when you're submitting a paper to a journal. The journal is only publish the ones that accepted and published, but they do not publish the one with the feedback or the one was rejected. So this ones is confidential for the PIs themselves. So there is no way to find a place that publish the proposal with no funding and say, this is our comments, this is our feedback, because this is something very confidential. So as I said before, like look at the ones who were already awarded and learn from them and work closely with the experts like Dr. Lara, Dr. Irby, and Dr. Tong. So they give you more help and guidance to do what you want to do.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, I would be happy to have such opportunity. And like Dr. Etchels and everyone said today, we are blessed, we are lucky to have our PIs, regents, professors, graduate students, project coordinators, everybody on the bus, like Dr. Irby has in her analogy, is a driver and is a helping driver and a collaborative driver. So Nahed, what I'm hoping is if this is confidential, I mean, this is learning area, as you know, I don't have knowledge in this area. If I want to see, for example, a call of proposal and a kind of like grant, is it the grant that was accepted available online for any project in general, or?
You want to see an RFP?
Is the what? What did you ask, Hamada? What were you asking?
What I'm asking, Dr. Irby, I'm saying, if, for example, a project call for proposal, and we know that X university got that proposal, for example,
Those are available.
Yeah,
Go to ed.gov, look up the funding agency, and you'll find that grant. Usually they're there.
Mhm.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Irby.
Here's an example of an RFP that we're going to be responding to. I mentioned before that we were going to revise OLAS for this new competition. Here's the RFP for this. I'll put that in the chat box. This is an NSF competition. What this doesn't have is the WWC requirements, because for some reason NSF doesn't follow the WWC things when they're doing education research. But this is a pretty standard RFP. So this is a good example to look at and browse through.
Thank you so much, Cara.
Good. And very quickly, one other thing that happens sometimes for us is that other grant writers will reach out to us. This happened last year for us with one of the grants that we were looking at, and it's their grant, but they need an education side. There has to be an education outreach element to their grant. So sometimes we'll be approached to write the education outreach part of their grant, and then we become a partner in their grant. So it's not always us driving the bus. We might be a passenger on the bus to a smaller extent, but all of that is valuable to the center in terms of our scope and impact and the work that we do. So it's important that when you're talking to folks, you let them know that we can do that side of things, right? If they want scalability for their education side, we can do that. And especially for things like the X grants, you can't get an X grant unless you've got 2 friends. It's that simple. You've got to go and find people in other colleges, other departments to write that grant together. The entire point of President Young's initiative is to de-silo the university and create collaboration, intercollegial collaboration across the university. So it's important that if you see the deadline is December 1, you're not going to go and make 2 friends between now and December 1. You've got to think about this for the X grants for next year, in 2 years, in 3 years. Start those relationships now. It's really important. Dr. Irby and Dr. Lara have the ability to make a phone call and get the money on board because they have longevity of their relationships over decades with people. Dr. Rodriguez talking about 30 years ago, we were doing this together, right? So you got to think back, way back in school partnership. The principals now that are coming through PAL and A+, where are they going to be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? And are we just going to put them through a degree here and then thanks and gig them? Or is it the case that we're going to maintain those relationships? David, as Dr. Irby said, is phenomenal at maintaining relationships to the extent that now he sits on the board of advisors for Hearn, okay, which he likes to mention when he's talking to me because I don't sit on a board. But those relationships are really integrally, really important. David will know the granularity of what's happening in Hearn. That is valuable to us because it gives us a kind of litmus test, a sense of the temperature of what's going on in that area of Texas with education. He'll be talking to Dr. Johnson, Dr. Lloyd, about what's happening with the school districts. It gives him a great sense of what's happening, what's coming down the pipe from the government to the schools. All that is critical for our understanding the lay of the land and what the field is asking for and what educators need in their classrooms. So that relationship side is almost as important as spending your time reading grants and looking at grants.
Let me close quickly by saying, Fuwei is not here, but she is the ideal person to share the caliber of research because those kind of grants we have been able to produce. Our literature is extremely well known across the United States under what they call WWW. But again, this is a team effort. Don't expect that the effectual media grant is going to be funded. No. In the past, we used to have incredible, super great proportion of grants submitting and funded. Today, for multiple reasons, it's getting tough and more tough. When I talk to people in Washington, they say, what happened is this: more people want to be part of grants. The government continued allocating the same amount of money, resources. And now they say, we have another big competitor that we call private business. So you know that this is not easy, but also it's not impossible. But working together is a good way to continue, because let me tell you one more time before to close. Any institution would love, when we hire people, we have one more question: why do I have to hire you? When you say, well, I have a good understanding of the teaching culture, I'm a good teacher, my reach is moving little by little. In addition to that, you say, but in addition, I know how to bring resources. They say that position is yours. Thank you, Cara, for preparing this type of, because it's critical. We never ever had the opportunity in graduate school to enjoy this quality presentation. And I hope we have been learning a lot, and hope to see you navigating in the near time with major grants. Thanks again.
Good. Thank you, Dr. Lara. December 3rd is our next Paths to Publication. That's going to be Dr. Nahed Abdelrahman, and she's going to present on systematic reviews. So December 3rd is our next one, Dr. Nahed Abdelrahman on systematic reviews. So thank you so much, everybody, for giving up your time. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it. We hope this is a learning experience for you. We hope there's some takeaways, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.